Lightning tore open the sky as Rowan turned onto his street. Fat raindrops hammered the windshield, and the wipers fought to keep up. He could barely see past the glare of streetlights reflecting off puddles. His hands clenched the steering wheel. Working late on an electrical job in a rundown warehouse had already worn him out, and this storm was the last thing he needed. But just ahead, on the curb near his house, something made him slow down. A car he didn't recognize sat idling with its headlights off. The silhouette of two figures stood beside it, illuminated briefly by a flash of lightning. Rowan felt his pulse spike. He braked and squinted. One figure was unmistakably Aurora, his wife. Even in the dark and pouring rain, he recognized her slim frame and the way she lifted one hand to brush back her damp hair. The other figure, a man, leaned in close. Rowan felt a surge of dread. With a sudden burst of movement, the man climbed into the driver's seat of that unknown car. The engine roared and the vehicle sped away, splashing water against the curb. Aurora stumbled backward, looking frazzled. Before Rowan could fully process what he'd seen, she hurried toward their front door, shoulders hunched against the downpour. Rowan parked, practically leaping out of his truck. Rain pelted his jacket as he half-ran to the porch. He saw Aurora, hair dripping, fumbling with her keys. She flinched when she realized he was right behind her. "Who was that?" he demanded, breath steaming in the cold air. His voice came out harsher than he intended, rattling with a mix of fear and anger. Aurora's eyes widened, and for a split second, he thought he saw guilt flicker across her face. He's just a friend from the meditation group," she said, her tone uneven. "Carter offered me a ride home since it was so late and you were still at work." Lightning flashed again, lighting up her expression. Rowan struggled to read her. He wanted to trust her. They'd been married 10 years. Trust should have been second nature. Yet the moment felt wrong, the tension in her posture, the way her voice cracked. "Is that why you were out here in the storm?" he said, forcing a calmer tone. "You didn't even text me." She turned the key in the lock. The class ran late. Celeste scheduled an extra session. Then the storm rolled in. Carter offered. She trailed off, but instead of facing him, she quickly pushed open the door and stepped inside. Rowan followed, flipping the hallway light switch. A dull flicker cast shadows on the walls. The house felt unusually cold for an early fall night. Aurora set her jacket on a hook, her soaked blouse clinging to her arms. He pressed on, voice lower, yet urgent. "Aurora, talk to me. Something's off." She turned around slowly, water dripping from her hair onto the hardwood floor. "It's nothing," she insisted, her tone too quick. She paused, exhaling. "I'm exhausted. Let's discuss it tomorrow when I'm not freezing." A shiver went through her, whether from the chill of the rain or the tension, Rowan couldn't tell. In the living room, the lamp flickered with the wind outside. He sensed the moment was slipping away, but he couldn't let it go. "That guy who drove off Carter," Rowan said, wiping a drop of rain from his brow. "He sure took off fast." Aurora's eyes darted sideways, as though searching for an excuse. "He hates driving in storms," she muttered. "He wanted to hurry home." Somewhere in Rowan's chest, a knot of suspicion tightened. He took a breath, tried to keep it even. Lightning flashed again, and thunder rattled the windows. They stood there, silent. The only sounds were their ragged breathing and the howl of wind outside. Finally, Aurora moved past him, heading toward the stairs. "I don't want to fight tonight," she whispered, voice shaking. "We'll talk tomorrow." Rowan opened his mouth to speak, but the words stuck in his throat. He watched her vanish upstairs, footsteps echoing. Outside, the sky unleashed another round of thunder. Left alone in the dim living room, Rowan stared out through the window. The reflection of the streetlights on the wet pavement revealed a pair of tire tracks leading away from his house, raw proof of someone else's presence. He let out a slow breath, heart still pounding. "Who is he really?" he murmured to no one. The storm raged on, and he had a feeling it was only the start of something far more tumultuous. Early the next morning, gray clouds lingered, dripping a light drizzle outside the kitchen window. Rowan stood at the counter, stirring instant coffee with mechanical motions. He hardly slept after last night's encounter. Each clap of thunder had resonated with the questions boiling in his mind. Aurora appeared in the doorway wearing an oversized sweater and sweatpants, hair still damp from her shower. She offered a half smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Morning," she said softly, stepping around him to grab a mug. Rowan nodded and tried to relax. This was their home, the place they'd built together over 10 years. He recalled how they used to chat every morning, teasing each other about who hogged the blankets or burned the coffee. Now it felt like strangers living under one roof. He took a careful sip of his coffee, burning his tongue slightly. "You all right?" Aurora blew steam off her mug. "I'm a little tired," she said. "Sorry about last night. It got late. I didn't want to bother you. Your job's been stressful enough." Rowan swallowed the urge to confront her about Carter again. Instead, he asked, "What's with that meditation group anyway? You've been spending a lot of evenings there." Aurora shifted on her feet, glancing at the window. "It's Celeste's group," she replied, as though that explained everything. "I told you about her, remember? She's helping me find balance." He recalled the name. Celeste, some self-styled spiritual guide or counselor. Aurora had mentioned her in passing weeks ago, usually after one of those New Age sessions. "She's the instructor?" "Yes, Celeste runs everything. She's, an energy healer, I guess you'd call it." Aurora paused, biting her lip. "She believes in unlocking a deeper self through mindful reflection. It's helped me cope with stuff." Rowan understood the stuff she meant. Their biggest heartbreak. A year ago, Aurora discovered she couldn't conceive. Months of doctor visits, hormone tests, dashed hopes. The silence that followed cut deeper than any argument. He set his mug down. "I want you to be happy, Aurora, truly. But last night, that guy, Carter, giving you a ride in the middle of a thunderstorm." She placed a hand on his arm. "Look, it was just a ride. I swear, he's part of the group. You know how the weather can turn ugly and you were working late." Rowan studied her face. He saw anxiety, sadness, maybe a glimmer of fear. Still, suspicion coiled tight in his gut. "All right," he said, forcing calm. "Next time, just call me, okay?" Aurora nodded stiffly. She pulled her sweater tighter around her shoulders. "I'm sorry if it upset you. Let's not ruin the morning. I need to head out soon anyway. Celeste wanted me to meet her before tonight's session." Rowan's brow furrowed. "Another session? Didn't you just have one last night?" "There's a special workshop," she muttered. "Anyway, we can talk more later." He nodded, biting back another round of questions. In the stale hush of the kitchen, they finished breakfast in near silence, two people trying to pretend the house hadn't just shifted on its axis. Back in the bedroom, Rowan tossed on a clean shirt and jeans, glancing around at the neat space they once shared with so much warmth. Photos of them laughing at a cabin in Colorado. A snapshot from their wedding day, pinned to the dresser mirror. Next to it was Aurora's phone, screen lit with a new text. He hesitated, guilt twisting in his chest. But the memory of last night pushed him forward. He tapped the phone's lock button. A single message glowed. "See Master. Looking forward to tonight. Don't be late." His pulse quickened. See Master had to be Celeste, right? Or was it Carter? The swirl of doubt returned. He put the phone down gently. Staring at his reflection in the mirror, he wondered if he was being paranoid, but something about Master sent a chill through him. With a final glance at the wedding photo, he sighed and left the room, determined to find out what was truly happening behind Aurora's newfound spiritual journey. That afternoon, Rowan made a snap decision. He'd pick Aurora up from her meditation center himself. If this Celeste was the root of Aurora's late-night mysteries, he wanted to see her up close. He called a buddy from work, Gary, one of his electricians, to cover a small appointment. Then he drove to the address Aurora had offhandedly mentioned. The building was an unremarkable storefront in a small strip mall. A sign read, "Inner Path Meditation and Wellness," with tinted windows concealing the interior. Rowan switched off the engine. Across the lot, a handful of cars were parked, including one bright blue sedan he thought might belong to Aurora. Rain still pattered lightly, the gray sky making the neon sign in the window flicker oddly. He waited until the next group session ended. People trickled out, most wearing loose-fitting clothes or carrying yoga mats. Then he spotted Aurora, trailing behind a woman with sleek dark hair flowing past her shoulders. The woman wore a long, flowing cardigan in pale violet. She turned slightly, giving Rowan a glimpse of sharp cheekbones and steady eyes. That had to be Celeste. Steeling himself, Rowan got out of his truck and approached. Aurora noticed him first, her gaze flickering with surprise and maybe a dash of alarm. Celeste glanced over, her expression morphing into polite curiosity. "Rowan?" Aurora said, forcing a small smile. "I didn't expect you here." He gave her a slight nod, then extended a hand toward Celeste. "Figured I'd pick you up," he said. "I'm Rowan, Aurora's husband." Celeste's handshake was light but confident, her eyes never leaving Rowan's face. "Celeste Harrington," she replied in a calm, measured tone. "Aurora speaks very highly of you." Rowan noted the subtle tilt of her head, the way she sized him up as if she could read his aura. "She does?" he said, trying not to sound sarcastic. Aurora shifted on her feet, hugging a small folder to her chest. "Celeste has been guiding me on some deeper work," she murmured. "Mindfulness, breath control, that sort of thing." Celeste offered a gentle smile. "It's more than that. I help individuals rediscover their authentic selves, beyond external expectations. Aurora's made progress, but there's always more to learn." Rowan frowned slightly, glancing at his wife. "Progress in what exactly?" Celeste's gaze flicked between them. "Healing mostly, letting go of old wounds, building courage to explore new paths free from—" She hesitated as if choosing her words. "Boundaries that no longer serve." That phrase made Rowan's stomach clench. He forced a civil tone. "Sounds interesting. I just want to make sure Aurora's happy and safe." An awkward silence settled. Aurora broke it by clearing her throat. "I'll grab my bag, then we can head home. Just give me a minute inside." She vanished back into the building. Rowan and Celeste stood alone near the glass door. Rain drummed on the awning overhead. Celeste's smile remained, though it felt more like an assessment than simple courtesy. "You seem concerned," she said quietly. "Aurora mentioned tension at home. She needs space to find her own truth." Rowan gritted his teeth, determined not to start an argument in a public parking lot. "I'm here because I care," he said simply. Celeste inclined her head. "Of course." Then she glanced past Rowan, and her expression flickered. He turned to see a tall man stepping out of the building Carter. For a second, Rowan and Carter made eye contact. Carter's face stiffened as if caught off guard. He mumbled something to Celeste, then abruptly turned away, striding to a dark sedan. He didn't even spare Rowan another glance. Rowan felt a jolt of anger but forced himself to remain calm. Celeste simply tilted her head. "Another student," she said, as though it were trivial. "We have a varied group." Before Rowan could say more, Aurora re-emerged with her bag. "Ready," she said, avoiding Rowan's gaze. "Let's go." He nodded. "Thanks for your time," he told Celeste, though his tone held no warmth. As he led Aurora to his truck, rain swirling around their ankles, Rowan's mind spun. Seeing Carter's face had solidified one thing. This wasn't just a friendly meditation center. Something deeper was unfolding, and he felt like an outsider in his own marriage. That evening, a steady drizzle coated the streets. Rowan turned into the parking lot of the local workshop union, a place where men from the neighborhood tinkered with wood projects, fixed up cars, or just hung out to blow off steam. He'd decided to drop by, half for distraction and half to seek advice. Inside, the warm glow of overhead lights revealed a large workshop lined with saws, drills, and half-finished wooden sculptures. A few men chatted by a battered sofa. Rowan spotted Dewey, an older guy with a broad grin and a baseball cap, sorting screws into plastic bins. "Well, look who decided to grace us with his presence," Dewey said, tipping his cap. "Long time no see, buddy." Rowan managed a grin. "Working late, you know how it is." Dewey offered him a stool. "You look like you got the weight of the world on your shoulders. Want to share with Uncle Dewey?" Sighing, Rowan sat down. The events of the past 24 hours had tightened a coil of anxiety in his chest. "I think Aurora's in over her head with this meditation group. There's a guy there, Carter." Dewey narrowed his eyes. You think she's messing around? Rowan rubbed the back of his neck, unsure how to respond. I caught her talking with him late at night. She says it's nothing. Then there's this Celeste woman, their so-called mentor, telling Aurora to find her true self. It's like everything in her life, our life isn't enough anymore. Dewey sucked in a breath. That's how it starts sometimes. One day it's new friends. Next day they're drifting away from you. He paused, picking at a splinter in his thumb. What do you plan to do? Not sure, Rowan muttered. I want to trust Aurora. She's been through hell with the fertility issues. But something's off. Dewey leaned closer. You gotta find out the truth, man. If it's just shady vibes, you can talk it through. If there's more like real betrayal, he shrugged. You gotta protect yourself. The word betrayal sparked a flare of dread in Rowan. He recalled Carter's face in the parking lot, the tension in Aurora's shoulders. I can't believe it's come to this, he said quietly. We were supposed to be a team. Dewey patted him on the back. Then do some digging. You might not like what you find, but at least you'll know. A wave of conflicting emotions hit Rowan. Sadness for the marriage he loved, anger at the possibility of a third person. You really think that's the best approach? Better than sitting in the dark. Dewey cocked his head. Look, you're not forcing anything. You're searching for facts. Rowan nodded, a pit forming in his stomach. Then I guess I'll keep my eyes open. Watch her schedule. See if she's lying. They chatted a bit more light banter about the workshop's broken bandsaw until Rowan checked his phone. Aurora hadn't texted or called. He forced a laugh, thanked Dewey, and made his way out to the parking lot, the night air cool against his cheeks. On the drive home, Rowan replayed last night's image in his head. Aurora trembling in the rain, Carter speeding off. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. She'd never given him any reason to doubt her before. But now, every silence between them felt heavy with secrets. When he stepped into the house, Aurora was in the living room, scrolling through social media. She looked up, offered a brief smile. Hey, she said softly, as if trying for normalcy. Rowan forced a smile back. Hey, you good? Aurora nodded, eyes darting away. He felt the gulf between them widen by the day. He'd made up his mind. He would quietly figure out whether there was more to Carter and Celeste than just mindfulness classes. After all, he told himself, nobody steals your partner without a fight. Rowan woke up earlier than usual, his mind buzzing with questions about Aurora. A restless night had left him groggy, so he gulped down some coffee and decided to poke around her charity work story. He'd never doubted her sincerity before, but everything changed after those pictures in his head of her and Carter standing too close in the rain. He slipped into his pickup truck and drove through steady morning traffic until he reached a local community center, the place Aurora had mentioned volunteering at. The building's exterior was a peeling brick facade with a small sign reading Morning Star Nonprofit. Rowan parked nearby and watched for nearly an hour, pretending to check messages on his phone. Volunteers trickled in and out, carrying boxes of donated clothes, loading vans with food supplies. But Aurora was nowhere in sight. A sense of dread gnawed at him. She definitely wasn't here. Realizing he might look suspicious lurking around, Rowan turned the key in his ignition and headed to a second address Aurora had once mentioned, a thrift shop across town. Same story. No sign of her. He recalled how Aurora insisted she had a full schedule that day, fundraising tasks, sorting donations, maybe a short lunchtime break. So where was she? Back home, Rowan sank into the couch and stared at the living room walls. Echoes of the previous night's argument ran through his mind. Aurora claiming he was too controlling, him accusing her of lying. Everything felt upside down. A flicker of anger mixed with hurt. He needed proof either he was letting paranoia eat him alive or she was deceiving him. Determined, Rowan messaged Travis, an acquaintance from the workshop union who sometimes did odd surveillance jobs. Travis specialized in private investigations for small insurance claims, so he knew his way around quietly snapping photos and tailing people. Hey, think I could hire you for a discreet job? No big confrontation, just want to see if someone is lying to me, Rowan texted. Travis replied almost immediately, Sure, send details. I won't get in your way. Later that afternoon, Rowan felt an uneasy anticipation as he waited in his truck down the block from their house. Aurora stepped outside, dressed in a neat blouse and carrying a shoulder bag. She glanced around before driving off in her little hatchback. A moment later, Travis's sedan smoothly pulled out of a side street to follow her at a distance. Rowan gripped the wheel, heart pounding with guilt. This was so far from the trust-based marriage they used to have. Some time passed endless in Rowan's mind until Travis sent him a text with a single photo attached. Aurora and Carter, entering a small cafe near downtown. The image was grainy, but unmistakable. Aurora's hand brushed Carter's arm as if in casual affection, a gentle smile on her face. Rowan's stomach lurched. Were they just friends grabbing coffee? Or something more? He wanted to dismiss it as harmless, but the tension in the picture told a different story. Aurora leaning in, Carter's posture relaxed and confident. It felt too familiar for mere acquaintances. That evening, after Travis reported Aurora had driven straight home from the cafe, Rowan confronted the swirling confusion in his head. He sat on the porch, lost in thoughts. If these volunteer hours were a cover for meeting Carter, what else was Aurora hiding? He didn't know how to approach her without exploding. The memory of her face when he questioned her about Carter lingered frightened yet defiant. But the photo haunted him. The closeness, the way Carter seemed to own the space around her. As dusk settled, Rowan quietly let himself into the living room. Aurora was in the kitchen, rummaging through the fridge for a late snack. She looked up, blinking in surprise. "Didn't hear you come in," she said. Rowan forced a neutral expression. "Long day," he murmured. She shut the fridge, an unopened bottle of water in her hand. "Me too." Their eyes met, tension crackling like static in the air. Rowan's fingers twitched. He wanted to show her the photo, demand answers. But he couldn't face a blow-up, not yet. Instead, he nodded stiffly and headed upstairs, leaving Aurora standing in the kitchen with a puzzled look. She probably wondered why he was so quiet. Yet he couldn't form the words. Suspicion was like a barrier between them. Deep down, Rowan still clung to the hope that this was all an overreaction. Perhaps there was an innocent explanation. But each time he imagined Aurora leaning toward Carter, it felt like shards of glass in his chest. By mid-morning the next day, Rowan's restlessness had spiraled into full-blown anxiety. He lounged at the dining table, swirling coffee in his mug, half listening to a passing garbage truck rumble outside. Aurora walked in, checking her phone with an air of preoccupation. He decided he couldn't stand the silence anymore. "You said you'd be volunteering yesterday," Rowan began, voice measured, "but I swung by 2 places you've mentioned. You weren't there." Aurora looked up sharply. "You went looking for me?" She set her phone down with a thud. "Why?" "Because I was worried," Rowan countered, trying to keep from raising his voice. "And guess what? You were nowhere to be found. So tell me, where were you?" The tension snapped like a taut string. Aurora's eyes flashed. "God, Rowan, do you have to track my every move? You're suffocating me. I couldn't keep going to that same nonprofit, okay? There were changes. And She paused, swallowing. "I needed a break from the volunteer circuit." His temper flared. "But you keep insisting you're busy volunteering. Now it turns out you've been lying about it?" Aurora's face darkened, tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. "Celeste says I need to be honest with myself first before I can be honest with anyone else. She told me to reevaluate what I truly want. Maybe that's not slaving away at some charity or being a wife to me." Rowan's words came out like a punch. "What's Carter got to do with it?" Her cheeks flushed. "Carter is a friend," she insisted, though her voice wavered. "You're blowing this out of proportion. I can't breathe around you anymore. Everything I do, you accuse me of something." Rowan set his mug down so hard coffee sloshed over the rim. "Because you're acting like a stranger, hiding behind Celeste's advice, lying about where you go. I'm not an idiot." Aurora tensed, shoulders rigid. "You have no idea how alone I've felt, how worthless it's been, not being able to have a family. Celeste, she understands. Carter understands." That last statement cut deep. Rowan felt his chest tighten with betrayal. "So now I'm the bad guy," he muttered, voice shaking. "I'm just trying to hold us together." Her tears spilled over. Then stop making me feel trapped. Celeste says I should stop letting everyone else dictate my life. Maybe I'm finally seeing that you're—" She broke off, face twisted in despair. Controlling? Is that the word? He challenged, fists clenching at his sides. Yes! Aurora cried, breathing hard. You're controlling! Always in my face about every little thing! I'm done apologizing for wanting to figure myself out! Rowan's anger surged. Figure yourself out by lying to your husband about volunteering? Running around with Carter behind my back? That's not self-discovery, that's betrayal. Her voice cracked. Fine. Then call it whatever you want. She turned, storming toward the stairs. Halfway up, she shouted over her shoulder, I'll sleep in the spare room tonight. At least you can't hover over me there. He opened his mouth to retort, but no words came. Instead, he sank onto a dining chair, adrenaline thrumming through his veins. Their house felt like a battlefield. The echoes of Aurora's crying lingered in the hallway, pressing on him like a heavy weight. That night, they barely crossed paths. Rowan heard her shut the spare room door. The distinct click of the lock sent a shiver through him. Lying alone in bed, he stared at the ceiling fan whirling lazily, remembering how they used to laugh over silly inside jokes before falling asleep. Now the silence was bitter, and the gulf between them felt wider than ever. 2 days later, Rowan decided to head to the meditation center after Aurora left for her session. If Carter wanted to help Aurora find her true self, then Rowan intended to find out exactly how. He parked a short distance away and waited until he spotted Carter's sleek black sedan pull into the lot. Sure enough, Aurora arrived moments later, greeting Carter with a small nod. Rowan's jaw tightened. Summoning what remained of his courage, he hopped out of his truck and strode toward the entrance. A warm breeze drifted through the air, carrying the faint smell of incense from inside the center. Inside the lobby, a few people in yoga pants and loose shirts gave Rowan quizzical looks. He scanned the small crowd until he spotted Carter standing near a bulletin board, flipping through flyers. Rowan stepped up behind him. We need to talk. Carter turned, eyes flickering with recognition. His expression settled into a polite, almost dismissive smile. Rowan, right? Aurora's husband. Yeah, that's me, Rowan said, forcing calm. Mind telling me what's going on with my wife? Carter shrugged, leaning casually against the wall. I'm just helping Aurora learn about herself, he replied, voice smooth as glass. She's got a lot on her mind. She deserves support. Anger flashed inside Rowan like a struck match. And you think that's your job? Offering her rides? Meeting her behind my back? A few curious onlookers slowed their steps, sensing tension. Carter's smirk broadened. I'm not the problem here, man. You are. He took a slow breath, as if enjoying Rowan's frustration. Aurora told me how you hover over her, how you can't accept she's changing. Rowan's fists balled at his sides. Stay out of my marriage, got that? Carter raised both hands in mock surrender. Relax, big guy. Aurora came to me. Red-hot fury exploded. Rowan lunged, his fist aimed at Carter's jaw. But an older man in a flowing robe, possibly another instructor, rushed between them, arms outstretched. Hey, we don't allow violence here! Carter jerked back, narrowly avoiding Rowan's punch. Disapproval rippled through the onlookers. Aurora appeared at the hallway entrance, eyes wide with shock. Rowan breathed hard, chest heaving. Carter smoothed his shirt, then looked at Aurora with an expression that mixed arrogance and concern. You see, he said quietly, your husband can't handle a simple conversation. Aurora glanced from Carter to Rowan, tears shining in her eyes. Rowan, please, not here. But Rowan couldn't stop. Aurora is my wife, he growled. This clown has no right. A staff member grabbed Rowan's arm, steering him toward the door. Carter's last words echoed, low and smug. Face it, you can't hold on to her forever. He stormed out into the sunny parking lot, heart pounding, humiliation burning his cheeks. Aurora didn't follow. The center's door swung closed behind him with a solid click. In his truck, Rowan slammed a hand on the steering wheel. The only thing worse than Carter's smug face was seeing Aurora look at him with a mix of pity and sadness. Minutes later, he drove away in a haze of anger and embarrassment. The words, you can't hold on to her, rattling in his mind like nails in a tin can. Late that evening, Rowan was at home alone. perched on the edge of the living room couch, mind whirling. Aurora hadn't come back from the meditation center yet, and the house felt hollow. He half expected a furious text from her, or maybe an apology. Neither arrived. His phone buzzed, but the caller ID wasn't Aurora, it was Mildred, Aurora's mother. Rowan hesitated, heart pounding. He and Mildred got along well enough, though they weren't super close. He swiped to answer. "Rowan?" Mildred's voice trembled slightly. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm worried." Rowan let out a slow breath. "It's okay. I'm worried too." "She came by yesterday," Mildred continued, voice tight. "Said she's been confiding in a man named Carter. She told me she feels he understands her better than anyone else, especially in the spiritual sense." Mildred paused, as if steeling herself. "I'm not saying she's right, but she's convinced this is the only way she can handle her grief." Rowan swallowed a lump in his throat. Hearing it confirmed from Aurora's own mother cut deep. "So she told you outright that Carter understands her more than me?" Mildred sighed. "Aurora's not thinking clearly. She's stressed, depressed, and I suspect Celeste is filling her head with all these grand ideas of finding freedom." She sniffed, clearly emotional. "I love my daughter, but I feel like she's slipping away." After a long pause, Rowan spoke quietly. "I don't know what to do anymore. She called me controlling, said she feels trapped. I tried to talk sense into her, but Carter, he's always there. And Celeste keeps feeding her this notion that I'm the enemy." "I know." Mildred's voice cracked. "I just wanted you to be aware of what Aurora told me. She's confused, but she's also distant. I'm worried she'll make choices she can't undo." Rowan closed his eyes. "Thank you, Mildred." She offered a soft goodbye, and Rowan hung up, feeling hollow. He gazed at the framed wedding photo on the shelf, a younger version of him and Aurora grinning in front of a flower arch. The memory glowed with joy, two souls confident they'd tackle any obstacle together. Now the glass over the photo caught the lamp's reflection, as if mocking him with illusions. He set the photo aside, emotions tangling. Betrayal, sadness, a twisted sense of guilt. He blamed himself for not seeing the signs, for letting Aurora's despair after her diagnosis go unaddressed. Maybe he had hovered too much. Maybe Carter just said the right words at the right time. Stepping into a gap Rowan left unguarded. Outside, crickets chirped in the suburban darkness. The living room lights felt harsh on Rowan's tired eyes, so he flipped them off, sitting there in shadows. For a second, he thought he heard a car pull up, but it must have been a neighbor. Alone in the gloom, Rowan shut his eyes and tried to imagine a way forward. The conversation with Mildred played on repeat. Aurora truly believed Carter got her. The sting of that revelation mixed with the memory of Carter's smug face at the meditation center. A swirl of rage and heartbreak formed a knot in his throat. "I'm losing her." That thought dug into his chest as he forced himself to stand. He took one last glance at the darkened wedding photo. Despite the swirl of misery, a cold determination settled over him. This wasn't over yet. He refused to let Carter, Celeste, or anyone else break his marriage without a fight. But for the first time in his life, Rowan wasn't sure if fighting would be enough. Rowan woke to the sound of a car door slamming outside. He glanced at the clock on his nightstand, 7:15 a.m., and realized Aurora must have returned from another overnight meditation event. The tension in the house was at an all-time high, but he wasn't prepared for what he'd hear next. He found her in the kitchen, suitcase already propped against the counter. Her eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying or awake all night. Immediately, the sight of that suitcase set off alarm bells. "Aurora," he said, voice tight. "What's going on?" She pushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm leaving," she murmured, gaze sliding away from his. "At least for a little while. Celeste helped me see that I need freedom time on my own to figure things out." Rowan's pulse thumped. "Are you serious right now?" He glanced at the suitcase, then back at her. "We've been married a decade, and you think the solution is to walk out?" Aurora set her jaw, tears brimming. "You wouldn't listen to me. You've been watching my every move, throwing accusations. Celeste says I have to break free from that suffocation." He slammed a hand on the counter. "And that means running off with Carter?" He felt the name burn on his tongue. She flinched. "I never said I was running off with him. but I might stay somewhere else for a bit. Carter offered. Of course he did. Rowan's anger erupted. You think I'm gonna watch you ride off into the sunset with that guy? Not a chance. He snatched her purse from the counter, yanked out her wallet. If you're leaving, you'll do it without my money, or my car. What? Aurora gasped, eyes flaring. Rowan, give it back. He pulled out credit cards and tossed them aside, ignoring her pleas. Then he fished out the key fob to her hatchback. You can get your own ride, he said, voice trembling with fury. Your new spiritual mentor or your precious Carter can figure it out. She stared, breath hitching. You're taking away my resources? Are you kidding me? Tears of frustration pooled in her eyes. Celeste was right, you're trying to control everything. Damn right I'm controlling what's mine, Rowan spat. The bank account's under my name, the car's in both our names, and if you want out, then go. But you go with nothing I bought. Aurora's cheeks flamed. She grabbed the suitcase handle, knuckles white. This is insane, you're insane. Her voice cracked. But I'm done fighting. They stood there, locked in a standoff, until the sound of a car horn outside broke the tension. Rowan's stomach twisted as Aurora whipped around and wheeled her suitcase to the door. Through the window, he caught a glimpse of Carter's sedan idling at the curb. That's him, isn't it? Rowan growled. He's picking you up like some taxi driver? She paused, shoulders trembling. Goodbye, Rowan. In a blur of motion, Aurora flung the front door open and lugged her suitcase down the steps. Rowan followed into the yard, bare feet on the damp grass, heart pounding. Carter stepped out of his sedan, wearing a smug, half-concerned look as he helped Aurora load her bag into the trunk. Rowan and Carter locked eyes. Rage boiled beneath Rowan's skin, but Aurora stood between them, tears spilling. Carter's only response was to incline his head slightly, a gesture that felt insulting in its calmness. Before Rowan could form a coherent shout, Aurora slipped into the passenger seat. The car door slammed. Carter reversed out the driveway with a crunch of gravel, leaving Rowan standing in the front yard, stunned and shaking. For a long moment, he simply stared at the empty street, feeling the crushing weight of everything he'd just lost. Days passed in a blur of grim routines. With Aurora gone, the house felt too large and hollow. Rowan tried to lose himself in work, taking on extra electrical service calls to occupy his thoughts. But every quiet moment yanked him back to the image of that car pulling away with Aurora inside. One evening, he found himself back at Workshop Union, the local men's club where sawdust covered the concrete floor. Tools clanged in the background as guys worked on half-finished projects. Dewey sat on a rickety stool near a wood lathe, sipping a soda. You look like you haven't slept in weeks, Dewey greeted, concern wrinkling his forehead. Your wife still gone? Yeah, Rowan sighed. She basically left with Carter. The words tasted bitter. He sank onto a stool beside Dewey. I tried to keep it from happening. Took her cards, the car key, everything. Didn't matter. Dewey let out a low whistle. Harsh move. Might have driven her right into his arms, you know. Rowan glared, but it was half-hearted. I couldn't let her take all our shared stuff to start a new life with him, right? What was I supposed to do, roll over and let her? You did what you thought best, Dewey said, scratching his jaw. But if you really want her back, maybe sabotage isn't the best plan. Then again, he shrugged. If you're aiming for payback, that's another story. A dull headache throbbed at Rowan's temples. I don't even know what I want anymore, he admitted. Half of me wants to fix things, and half wants to see them both crash and burn. Dewey nodded thoughtfully. Hate and love, two sides of the same coin. Let me tell you, man, if you go down the revenge path, it can get real ugly. But if you want that closure, some men just have to do it. Rowan's gaze dropped to the scuffed cement floor. He remembered the smug tilt of Carter's head, the gleam in Celeste's eyes whenever Aurora praised her. They'd taken advantage of Aurora's vulnerabilities, coaxing her into leaving. Now Rowan felt his anger forming an edge. Maybe I do need to hurt them back, he said quietly, at least so they understand what it's like. Dewey gave a half-smile, though there was a sadness to it. Nothing's stopping you, buddy. Just be ready for consequences. He offered Rowan a battered can of beer from a cooler. Here, let's toast to uncertain futures. Rowan took it, popped the tab with a hiss, and drank. The bitter taste matched his mood. He had no idea if revenge would fix anything, but the idea of Carter continuing on happily with Aurora stoked a sickening jealousy in him. Outside, the sun was dipping below the horizon, streaking the sky with orange and purple. Rowan drained the beer and stared at the workshop's open door, where the last rays of daylight illuminated floating specks of sawdust. The future felt dark. Maybe vengeance was a way to see in the dark, or at least feel like he was doing something. Meanwhile, Aurora tried to settle into Carter's cramped one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of town. It was far from the idyllic refuge she'd imagined. The walls were thin, the carpet worn. Boxes of Carter's old bills and random junk cluttered the living area. She spent her first morning there, perched on the edge of a sagging sofa, phone buzzing with messages from Celeste. Each text was a motivational nudge. Stay strong, Aurora. Liberation is never easy at first. Ignore Rowan's negativity. Remember your true path. But as Aurora looked around the dingy apartment, that true path felt questionable. Carter worked late-night shifts as a building supervisor downtown, leaving her alone until dawn. When he returned, exhausted, there was little conversation beyond quick updates about the day. She told herself this separation was temporary, that she needed time to heal. Yet confusion gnawed at her. One evening, Carter came home carrying fast food bags, circles under his eyes. Aurora mustered a small smile. Long night? He grunted, tossing the food on the kitchen counter. Same old. Another pipe burst in the basement. Had to call a plumber at 2 a.m. He shed his jacket, revealing a frayed uniform shirt. I'm beat. Aurora tried to help by unpacking the fries and burgers. Thanks for grabbing dinner, or breakfast. She laughed nervously. This weird in-between time felt surreal. Carter shrugged. Sure. He began shoveling fries into his mouth. So you talked to Celeste today? Yeah, she texted. Says I need to stay focused on my own growth, not think about Rowan so much. At Rowan's name, Carter's expression hardened. He's not worth the stress. I told you that. Aurora swallowed. You don't know him like I do. He set his burger down, turning to face her. I know he tried to punch me in front of everyone. I know you were miserable with him. Miserable? Was she? The memory of simpler times with Rowan flickered how he used to make her laugh, how safe she felt in their home. Now she was in a cramped apartment that smelled faintly of old takeout. Sighing, she sank onto a chair. I didn't expect living here to feel so off. Maybe I'm just adjusting. Carter exhaled sharply. Look, I'm trying, okay? I've got bills, night shifts, and all that. Could be worse. He glanced at the stack of overdue notices on the kitchen table, face darkening. Aurora's heart sank. She sensed Carter was under far more financial strain than he'd let on. Celeste's advice to seek independence had sounded noble, but Aurora was trading one set of problems for another. She realized she missed Rowan's presence, his stability, even the comforting smell of fresh coffee in their kitchen each morning. But the idea of returning felt too shameful to admit, especially with Celeste praising her courage. So she shoved those thoughts aside, forcing a weak smile at Carter. I'm sure it'll get better, she whispered, more to convince herself than him. Back in town, Rowan sat in his truck late one evening, engine off, a cold wind pressing against the windows. Across the street rose a rundown apartment building, Carter's address, courtesy of Dewey's friend who'd done some digging. Rowan clenched the wheel, nerves jangling. He told himself he just wanted to see how Aurora was living, maybe catch a glimpse, but his heart pounded with a dark excitement. Let's see how they like a little trouble for once. Slipping on a black hoodie, Rowan stepped onto the sidewalk. The street was mostly empty, a single street lamp buzzing overhead. He scanned the row of cars lining the curb until he spotted Carter's black sedan. The car was nothing fancy, but Rowan recalled the day it rumbled away from his house, Aurora in the passenger seat. That memory fueled his anger. Kneeling, he pulled a small pocket knife from his hoodie. His first intent was just to slash a tire, send a message, maybe cost Carter a few bucks. Yet the adrenaline rush overtook him. He nicked 2 tires, then a third, breath coming fast. The quiet hiss of escaping air almost satisfied him. Glancing around, he fished a note from his pocket and wedged it under the windshield wiper. It read in hastily scribbled letters, "Stay away from what's mine." Rowan crept back to his truck, heart drumming as though he'd run a marathon. A swirl of guilt and triumph pumped through his veins. Am I going too far? He wondered. But the image of Carter's smug grin banished any remorse. Early the next morning, Carter would emerge, find his tires destroyed, the cryptic note. Rowan almost wished he could see that moment of panic firsthand. He told himself it served them right, Carter for stepping into another man's marriage, Aurora for walking away. As he pulled onto the main road, the adrenaline ebbed, leaving a hollow ache in its wake. Yes, he'd struck a blow, but the real damage lay in the fact that he'd become this person, someone who lashed out in the dark, carrying anger like a knife. Yet as the streetlights blurred by, Rowan forced down his doubts. "You started this war, Carter," he muttered under his breath. "I'm just finishing it." Late afternoon sunlight slanted across the apartment parking lot, forming long shadows on the asphalt. Carter stepped out of his black sedan and studied the fresh tires he'd replaced last week. The previous ones had been mysteriously slashed. He still hadn't found any proof that Rowan was behind it, but a bitter suspicion ate at him. He trudged up the cracked concrete stairs to his floor, groceries in one arm, the other hand fumbling for his keys. Something felt off the instant he reached the landing. The door to his unit sat ajar by half an inch, as though forced. He froze, pulse pounding. Cautiously, Carter pushed the door open. The living room light was on, but the place felt eerily still. At first glance, the couch and table looked normal, if messy. Then he noticed the closet door in the corner stood wide open, clothes and jackets strewn across the floor. His TV was missing. Heart hammering, he rushed to the bedroom. The small dresser there was turned upside down. Random electronics were gone too. "Damn it!" he hissed, dropping the grocery bag on the kitchen counter. A wave of helpless anger surged in his chest. He had no doubt who might be pulling the strings behind this break-in, though it could have been random thieves. Still, Carter felt singled out, targeted. He dialed 911. Within 20 minutes, a pair of police officers arrived, taking notes and snapping photos. One of them, a woman with a notepad, glanced at Carter's face. "Any idea who might want to break in here?" Carter grimaced. "No solid proof," he muttered. "I'm dealing with someone who's not happy I'm dating his ex, but I don't think I can accuse him of a burglary without evidence." The officer studied him a moment. "We'll file a report. You can fill in any details that come to mind later." She handed him a card. "Give us a call if you remember anything suspicious." After they left, Carter felt a hollow ache. The theft itself was bad enough, a second blow to his wallet after replacing tires. But the sense that he was under siege weighed heavier. He was a man losing ground, and it infuriated him. By the time Aurora came home from a late errand, Carter was pacing near the sofa, frustration carved into every muscle. She stepped inside and halted at the sight of overturned drawers, heart lurching. "Oh my God, what happened?" "A break-in," Carter said tensely, gesturing around. "They took the TV, my old laptop, a bunch of random electronics." Aurora's face paled. "When did this? Did you call the police?" "Yeah," he snapped. Then his tone softened, noticing her trembling. "They showed up, took a report. Nothing else to do now." Eyes darting to the scattered clothing, Aurora stooped to pick up a fallen jacket. "Why would someone do this?" Carter raked a hand through his hair. "I wish I knew. Could be random punks, but I can't ignore Rowan's grudge. He hates me, Aurora." His voice edged with resentment. "This is the second hit in a row. First my tires, now this." Aurora sank onto the couch, mind reeling. She thought about Rowan's cold fury when she left, the shock on his face as she got into Carter's car. Could he have gone so far as to orchestrate a break-in? In the silence, the final rays of sunset cast shifting colors on the living room walls, as if highlighting the ruin around them. Carter crouched beside her, brow knotted. "I can't keep living like this," he muttered, anger radiating. "I'm going to figure out how to fight back." Yet behind his bravado, Aurora sensed fear in him, a man who'd never been tested like this. She swallowed hard, guilt blooming in her chest. Had she set these terrible events in motion by leaving Rowan the way she did? In the following days, a dreary February rain settled over the city, soaking streets and turning the sky a dull gray. Aurora found herself walking home from a part-time gig she'd picked up at a small bookstore, water dripping from her coat. She dreaded returning to the apartment each evening. Carter's mood seemed darker, jumpier than before. His repeated curses about that scumbag Rowan left her anxious and weary. One evening, she unlocked the door to find Carter slumped on the couch, a bandage on his arm. Startled, she dropped her purse. "What happened to you?" He looked up, expression grim. "Some jerk jumped me outside the building last night. Tried to snatch my wallet." He rubbed his bruised cheek. "I ended up with a scraped arm in the scuffle." Aurora's mouth fell open. "Did you call the police?" He scowled. "Sure. Another report on record, but the mugger vanished. Cops said it might be a random attack, but I'm not convinced." His fingers trembled slightly. "Could be more intimidation. Maybe Rowan hired someone. Hell, I don't know." Her chest tightened. She'd never known Rowan to orchestrate actual violence, but these relentless incidents chipped away at her certainty. "Carter," she said softly, "you don't know for sure. It could be a fluke." He shot her a piercing look. "You think I'm paranoid?" He let out a bitter laugh. "You left your husband to be with me. Doesn't mean he's taking it lying down." She exhaled shakily. "Rowan was never cruel, though. He could be angry, but physically attacking you? I'm struggling to see it." Before Carter could retort, Aurora's phone buzzed on the table. She picked it up. Celeste was calling. With a flicker of dread, Aurora answered. "Hello?" Celeste's cool voice filled the line. "Aurora, you missed today's group session. Are you all right?" Aurora rubbed her temple. "I've been busy my new job, plus some problems at home." Celeste's tone grew sharper. "You won't find your freedom unless you push past these old boundaries. Remember, you owe it to yourself to stay committed." She paused. "Is Carter supportive, or is he letting negativity drag you down?" Aurora glanced at Carter, who was grimacing as he peeled back the bandage. "He's going through a tough time," she admitted. "Things aren't as smooth as I hoped." Celeste lowered her voice like a conspirator. "Don't let Rowan's intimidation or Carter's stress sway you from your path. You must move forward, Aurora. Embrace independence." Ending the call, Aurora felt torn. Independence, Celeste's mantra, had led her here to a shaky life with Carter in a cramped apartment under near-constant fear. Is this truly independence? She thought about Rowan, how stable he'd once seemed despite their marital cracks. That night, while Carter slept fitfully on the couch, Aurora stood at the window, gazing at the rain-blurred city lights. Regret coiled inside her chest. She could still recall the warmth of her old home Rowan's easy smile when he'd bring her morning coffee, the glow of their living room lamp in a peaceful evening. Had she traded that for illusions? Yet guilt kept her from picking up the phone. She'd chosen this new life, and part of her still believed Rowan's anger had driven her away. Conflicted, Aurora pressed her forehead to the cold window, uncertain where her future lay. The following weekend, Aurora and Carter got into a searing argument. Carter's stress boiled over creditors were calling, his damaged car needed more repairs, and he'd nearly lost his temp job after missing a shift due to his injury. He hurled an accusation that Aurora brought nothing but bad luck. "Maybe it's you," he snapped, pacing the living room. "Ever since you moved in, it's been one nightmare after another." Aurora flinched, tears gathering. "Are you saying I asked for any of this? You encouraged me to leave Rowan. You said it would be better here." He cast her a dark look. "Better than living with a controlling psycho, right? But I'm not your savior. I've got my own problems." They squared off in tense silence. Finally, Carter grabbed his jacket and stormed outside, leaving Aurora trembling by the sofa. Anger and despair warred in her chest. Is this what I traded everything for? Unsteady fingers unlocked her phone and she dialed Rowan's number without fully realizing it. Her heart pounded as the line rang. On the third ring, he picked up. "Aurora?" His voice sounded guarded, weary. She closed her eyes, tears slipping free. "Rowan, I'm sorry to call. Things are so messed up. I can't stop thinking about what we had." A tense pause. You mean before you left me for Carter? His tone was edged, but she heard pain behind it. She swallowed. Yes, it's awful here. He's not who I thought he was. I just... Her voice wavered. I'm realizing how wrong I was. Could we talk, or maybe try again? Another silence, heavier than the first. When Rowan finally spoke, it was cold. I don't know, Aurora. You hurt me, and I'm not sure I'm ready to fix us after you ran off with him. A stab of heartbreak pierced her. She should have expected his distance. I understand. I just wanted you to know that I regret everything. His next words came softly, laced with bitterness. I've been exploring new options myself. Let's just say you're not the only one who can move on. A wave of nausea hit her. What do you mean? She whispered. He let out a quiet, humorless laugh. I'm seeing someone else, someone who hasn't stabbed me in the back. I'm not sure I want to salvage anything with you. Aurora felt the phone slip in her sweaty grasp. I see. I have to go, Rowan said. Hope you figure out what you want. Then the line clicked dead, leaving Aurora with a hollow ache in her chest. She stood there, trembling, the quiet apartment an echo chamber of her regrets. Rowan reclined against the driver's seat of his truck, parked on a dimly lit residential street. Night settled over the neighborhood, hush broken only by distant sirens and a lone barking dog. A small house at the end of the block was his target Celeste's place, if Dewey's contact was correct. Inside Rowan's chest, anger simmered. He replayed images of Aurora leaving with Carter, of Celeste's manipulative grin at the meditation center. She's the mastermind, Rowan thought, the one who planted all that nonsense in Aurora's head. He tugged a baseball cap low and checked the trunk of his truck. As an electrician, he carried various wires, fuses, and tools, enough to sabotage a home's power system in subtle ways. No one would suspect a sabotage performed with such professional care. Rain sprinkled, faint but constant. Rowan left his truck, hood pulled up over his cap. Celeste's single-story house looked neat. Potted plants on the porch, a small lamp glowing behind drawn curtains. No car in the driveway, hopefully. She was out for the evening. He slipped around the side, scanning for security cameras. None spotted. Checking windows, he found the back door locked but not fortified beyond a simple deadbolt. With a screwdriver and a bit of forced pressure, he eased it open, heart pounding at the illicit rush. I'm doing this, he told himself, ignoring a twinge of conscience. Inside, a hush blanketed the air, broken only by the hum of a fridge. The small living room featured shelves crammed with crystals, tarot decks, and candles items Aurora used to mention. Rowan felt a wave of resentment. This is where she learned to turn against me? He crept to the electrical panel in a hallway closet. With practiced skill, he swapped out a fuse for one intentionally rigged to short, twisted a couple of wires. Nothing dramatic enough to burn the house down, but enough to cause flickering lights, random appliance failures, maybe short circuits that would terrify the occupant. Footsteps outside the front door jolted him. Celeste had returned early. Rowan's pulse skyrocketed. He killed the overhead light in the hallway, flattening himself behind the closet door. She entered with a click of heels on the hardwood. From his vantage point, he glimpsed her set her purse down. She muttered something about forgetting a folder in her car. Adrenaline surged. If she came to the hallway, she'd see him. Holding his breath, Rowan waited. Seconds later, Celeste cursed softly and stepped back out the front door. Grabbing his chance, Rowan slipped through the kitchen and out the back exit he'd forced. As he slinked past a side window, he heard a strange pop from inside, maybe the sabotage kicking in. Perfect. He hustled across the lawn and around the block to his truck. Rain slicked his hoodie, but he barely felt it through the rush. Once in the driver's seat, Rowan pressed his forehead to the steering wheel, lungs quivering. He pictured Celeste stumbling around her own dark, glitchy home, maybe getting zapped or spooked enough to wonder if she'd angered some cosmic force. A twisted sense of satisfaction pulsed in his veins. But in the background, a thread of guilt wove through him. He'd broken in, tampered with someone's property. He was drifting further from the man he'd once been, all in the name of revenge. Does it matter? He rationalized. They tore my life apart first. Flicking on the headlights, Rowan drove off into the wet night, unsure whether his heart pounded from exhilaration or deepening dread. One thing felt certain. The war he'd unleashed was still far from over. The first thing Aurora noticed that morning was the stack of ominous letters on Carter's kitchen counter. Their bold stamps read, "Final Notice" and "Overdue." She had seen them piling up for weeks, but Carter always brushed it off, claiming he had a plan. Now it looked like the plan was unraveling. Outside, the sky hung low and overcast, the distant rumble of thunder hinting at a coming storm. Aurora winced at the memory of that very first thunderous night she'd spent with Carter, when she believed leaving Rowan was her path to freedom. Now, sitting at a wobbly kitchen chair in a cramped apartment, she realized how naive she had been. Carter emerged from the bedroom with bleary eyes and unkempt hair. "You're up early," he grumbled. Aurora pointed to the letters. "We can't keep ignoring these. They want payment, Carter. Something about your car loan, the credit card debt, and the overdue rent." He grabbed a half-eaten sandwich from the fridge, took a bite, and avoided her gaze. "I'll handle it." "When?" She tried to keep her voice calm, but the tension in her chest was unbearable. "It's not just bills your boss called yesterday. They said if you miss one more shift, you're fired. And you almost missed last night because you were out searching for whoever attacked you." "Don't bring that up," he snapped, tossing the sandwich back into the fridge. "Whoever's been messing with me is probably Rowan. I can't even focus at work, worrying about my car or some thug jumping me again." Aurora sighed. "I know, but we can't live like this. Can't you, I don't know, talk to your manager, ask for a different schedule?" Carter glared, shoulders tensing. "Stop telling me what to do. You left your husband thinking I'd magically fix your life? Newsflash, I have my own shit to deal with." Her temper flared. "I never asked you to fix my life. You said you understood me, that being with you would be better than living under Rowan's so-called control." He scoffed, pacing the room. "And you believe that fairy tale? Face it, Aurora. You jumped ship when your marriage got tough, expecting to land in paradise. I never promised you a fairy tale." Those words hit like a punch to the gut. Aurora recalled the enthusiastic way Carter once encouraged her to break free from Rowan, how Celeste praised her courage. Now the illusions lay in tatters. A loud knock on the door interrupted them. Carter opened it to reveal a man in a cheap suit clutching a clipboard. "Carter Finch?" the man asked, expression stiff. Carter's face darkened. "Yeah," the man cleared his throat. "I'm with Metro Collections. We've been trying to contact you regarding outstanding balances. This is a final attempt before legal action." Aurora stood behind Carter, witnessing the color drain from his face. A sense of dread coiled in her stomach. "Can you come back tomorrow?" Carter said hastily, trying to close the door. I gotta get money in order." The collector wedged his foot in the doorway. "Sir, we need a confirmation of payment or a formal arrangement. Ignoring it won't make it go away." Aurora watched Carter's composure fracture. He threw the door shut, nearly hitting the man's foot. The collector shouted a warning through the wood before footsteps retreated down the hall. Carter turned, fists clenched. "Damn it! I'm so tired of everyone on my back!" He glowered at Aurora as though she were part of the problem. "Look, I gotta go figure something out. Don't wait up." He grabbed his jacket and stormed out. Aurora stood trembling, heart pounding. She sank to the couch, tears pooling. She had never felt so powerless. Not long after, the phone on the table buzzed Celeste's name glowing on the screen. Aurora stared at it, remembering how Celeste urged her to embrace independence, promising a new life free from Rowan's overshadowing presence. But all Aurora felt was regret and fear. She let the call go to voicemail. Then, in a haze of desperation, she stuffed her few belongings into an old duffel bag. Enough was enough. Carter's apartment no longer felt like an escape, but a sinking ship. Early afternoon, the clouds outside finally unleashed a steady rain, tapping against the windows like an unrelenting reminder of her fate. Carter still hadn't returned, and Aurora couldn't bear to wait. She scribbled a brief note on a scrap of paper. "Carter, I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. Aurora." Leaving it on the cluttered kitchen counter, she stepped into the hallway, duffel slung over her shoulder. The door clicked shut behind her with a hollow sound, as though marking the end of another shattered dream. An hour later, Aurora stood in front of the old house she once shared with Rowan. hair plastered to her face from the downpour. Thunder rumbled overhead, echoing her own churning nerves. She fumbled with the doorknob, only to find it wouldn't budge. Then she realized the locks had been changed. Her heart pounded. She rang the doorbell twice, no response. Tried again, soaking wet and trembling. Finally, footsteps approached from inside. The porch light flickered on. Through the rain-streaked glass, she caught sight of Rowan's silhouette. He opened the door just a crack, face unreadable. "Aurora!" She forced a shaky breath, water dripping from her coat. "Rowan, please let me come in. I left Carter. It's all a disaster." A flash of something, maybe concern, flickered across his eyes, but it hardened into a guarded expression. "You left him? So what? You think you can just stroll back in here?" Aurora's throat felt tight. "I don't know where else to go." She fought tears. "I made a mistake. He held up a hand. "Yeah, you did. You walked out on me, moved in with that jerk, then suddenly realized it's not a fairy tale." She flinched at the bitterness in his tone. "Rowan, I know I messed up. I'm not asking you to forgive me overnight, but can I at least come inside? Just to talk?" For a long moment, they faced each other as rain pelted the porch roof. Aurora's mind spun with memories, cozy nights on this very threshold, playful banter, the warmth of their marital bond. She couldn't believe how far they'd fallen. With a sigh, Rowan swung the door wider. Aurora's eyes widened when she spotted suitcases in the hallway, though they didn't look like his. He gestured for her to step in, and she entered, dripping water onto the hardwood. "Thank you," she whispered, setting her bag near the wall. Rowan folded his arms across his chest, jaw clenched. "You're in luck I'm alone right now, but don't get comfortable." At those words, Aurora's heart lurched. "Alone right now? What do you mean?" He exhaled. "I'm seeing someone, Aurora." His tone was strangely casual, as if discussing the weather. "And before you say a thing, no, I don't owe you an explanation." Her stomach twisted. She imagined Carter's accusations that Rowan found a new woman. The idea that Rowan had truly replaced her, moved on, left her reeling. She forced composure. I won't pry. I just need somewhere to crash for a night. Please." Rowan's gaze swept over her soaked clothes. "Fine, but only because I'm not heartless. You can sleep on the couch." Relief warred with humiliation. "Thank you," she murmured. He nodded curtly. "I'll get you some towels." He disappeared into the hallway. Standing alone, Aurora shivered. She glanced at the family photos still lining the mantel, memories of vacations and holidays. Everything seemed both familiar and foreign. The atmosphere was tense, missing the easy warmth that once made this house a home. Rowan returned, handing her a towel. "Dry off. I have to head out soon, so don't break anything." She tried to read his face. Head out where? His lips curved in a wry smile. "I'm meeting April. She's expecting me for dinner." A pang of jealousy shot through Aurora. April. The name stung like salt in a wound. She looked down, dabbing rain from her hair with the towel. "I understand." Without another word, he turned and left the room. Aurora was left in the echoing silence, guilt coiling around her heart. She had nowhere else to go, but it was painfully clear that this house, once her safe haven, might no longer be hers at all. Aurora jolted awake the next morning on Rowan's old leather sofa, the sunlight glaring in through half-open curtains. She rubbed her eyes, momentarily disoriented. Then the events of last night came rushing back, her confrontation on the porch, Rowan's curt generosity, and a mention of his new companion, April. A swift pang twisted in her gut. She rose and tiptoed into the kitchen, hoping to avoid an awkward run-in. Yet as she rounded the corner, she nearly collided with a slender brunette retrieving a glass from the cupboard. The woman turned, face registering mild surprise, then a subtle smirk. "Oh, you must be Aurora." Aurora's cheeks burned. You April?" April's expression didn't soften. "That's me. Didn't expect to see Rowan's ex sleeping on the sofa." She took a sip of water, studying Aurora with a practiced calm. "He told me you showed up out of nowhere last night in the rain." Aurora tried to steady her voice. "Yes, I'm sorry if it's inconvenient. I had nowhere else to go." April shrugged, setting her glass down. It's Rowan's house, not mine. Though I've been staying here often. She tilted her head as if inspecting Aurora. Look, I'm not trying to be cruel, but Rowan's had a rough time. Don't expect him to welcome you back with open arms. That ship sailed when you left with Carter, right? Heat rushed to Aurora's face, so he told her everything. I'm aware, she said quietly. I just needed a night to figure out my next step. In the hush that followed, footsteps approached from the hallway. Rowan entered, hair tousled, holding his phone. He caught sight of the two women, tension flashing across his face. Morning. April gave him a soft smile. I was just grabbing a drink. Aurora avoided Rowan's gaze, guilt gnawing at her. She realized how deeply she had hurt him, and now, seeing them together, it was her turn to feel the sting of betrayal. She cleared her throat. I'll be out of your way soon. Maybe I can find a cheap motel or call my mom. April stepped aside, letting Rowan navigate the conversation. He slipped his phone into his pocket. Aurora, he began, tone carefully neutral. I meant what I said last night. You can't just waltz back in and expect— She cut him off with a raised hand. I don't expect anything. I know I ruined our marriage. I only came because I had nowhere else. Her eyes stung with tears she refused to shed. I'm sorry. I'll go. April crossed her arms, observing them quietly. Rowan drew in a slow breath, wrestling with some inner conflict. Finally, he nodded. If that's your choice, I can't host you indefinitely. Aurora forced a small nod, heart aching. She gathered her meager belongings, each motion echoing with regrets. Before she could leave, Rowan suddenly spoke, voice sharper than before. We both know you put me through hell. Don't expect me to pretend it's all okay. She froze at his bitter tone. I know. I deserve your anger. His eyes flicked to April, then back to Aurora. I used to think we'd be together forever. That's what kills me. But now I'm learning to move on. Those words, although calm, shattered Aurora's last fragments of hope that they might easily reconcile. She clutched her bag and trudged toward the front door. Goodbye, Rowan, she managed, voice cracking. He didn't respond, and neither did April. The only sound was the front door clicking shut behind her, a quiet finality. Aurora stepped onto the porch, tears burning hot, the morning sun glaring overhead. The day was bright, but felt cold against her skin. As she descended the steps, she thought back to her initial betrayal, how she'd once believed Carter and Celeste had all the answers. Now she realized just how lost she truly was, without Rowan's warmth, without a stable home. She pressed her phone to her chest, mind drifting to her mother, Mildred. Perhaps that was her only refuge now. A deep breath racked her body, and she began the walk down the street with a hollow sense of desperation and guilt swirling in her soul. Dusk settled by the time Aurora arrived at her mother's small house on the outskirts of town. A single lamp glowed in the window, casting a soft rectangle of light onto the lawn. She hesitated at the front gate, nerves raw. It had been months since she'd visited. She raised a trembling hand to knock. After a pause, the door opened, revealing Mildred's startled expression. Aurora! Her mother exclaimed, worry and relief mingling. Come in, child. You're soaked in sweat and tears. Aurora stepped inside, the familiar scent of lavender potpourri enveloping her. Tears threatened to spill as she set her bag down. Mom, I need a place to stay, just for a while. Mildred drew her into a gentle hug. Of course, dear, of course. I've been worried sick. You barely return my calls. They settled in the living room, the ambiance warm and homey in contrast to Aurora's swirling despair. Through halting sobs, Aurora confessed everything her move to Carter's place. The financial chaos, the suspicion that Rowan was behind the attacks, Carter's unraveling, and finally Rowan's new relationship with April. Mildred's face reflected shock, then sympathy. My goodness, Aurora, you've been through a storm. Head bowed, Aurora exhaled shakily. Mom, I was so sure I needed to escape Rowan's control, but Carter, he wasn't who I thought. And Celeste, she just kept telling me to stay strong and blame Rowan for everything. I feel like I can't trust any of them. Mildred patted Aurora's hand. You made mistakes, dear, but you're not the first to be swayed by someone promising a fresh start. The question is, what now? Aurora buried her face in her hands. I wish I could fix things with Rowan, but he's moved on. And Carter's done. Celeste is in hiding after that accident at her house, something about faulty wiring. She won't pick up my calls. Mildred frowned. Sounds like you're out of illusions, at least. She hesitated. Are you sure Rowan's behind Carter's troubles? That's a dangerous path. A swirl of confusion flickered in Aurora's eyes. I don't know. Carter believes it wholeheartedly, but I've never seen Rowan stoop to violence. Then again, he's not the same man I married. None of us are the same. A thick hush followed. Mildred squeezed her daughter's hand. Stay here as long as you need, but please think carefully about your next steps. Don't let anger or shame decide. And if you feel you owe Rowan an apology, give it wholeheartedly, even if he won't take you back. Through tears, Aurora nodded. I just want to find some peace. Mildred pulled her into another hug, letting Aurora weep against her shoulder. For the first time in weeks, Aurora felt a sliver of true comfort. No manipulation, no agenda, just a mother's unconditional care. Meanwhile, across town, Rowan sat in his dimly lit living room, gazing at a photo from better days, he and Aurora smiling at a lake cabin. A swirl of unresolved anger and regret gnawed at his gut. April had stepped out for the evening, leaving him alone with his thoughts. He recalled Aurora's tearful face on the porch earlier, but the memory only rekindled the bitterness he'd worked so hard to fuel. He'd brought havoc upon Carter and Celeste, but something about it felt hollow now. Sighing, he set the photo aside and stared at the silent phone. He couldn't help wondering, was the revenge worth it? Where does this leave me now? 2 weeks after Aurora sought refuge with her mother, the final legal steps for the divorce began. The sun hung low in the sky as Rowan parked outside the modest law office downtown. He inhaled a measured breath, steeling himself. Inside, the waiting room was cramped, faded chairs against beige walls. Aurora was already there, sitting stiffly, hands clasped in her lap. She glanced up, eyes revealing a mix of regret and resignation. Rowan took a seat across from her. A tense silence lingered until a junior clerk appeared, beckoning them both into a small conference room. Behind a plain wooden desk sat a middle-aged attorney, Miss Jacobs, and another empty chair, presumably for Aurora's counsel, a gray-haired man named Mr. Patterson. Good morning, Miss Jacobs greeted, tone brisk yet polite. We're here to finalize the divorce terms. Let's address the property division and outstanding matters. Aurora's lawyer joined them moments later, briefcase in hand. Once all were settled, Miss Jacobs laid out the proposed settlement splitting the house equity, personal accounts, and minor assets. The core detail Rowan noticed was that the electrical contracting business he had painstakingly shielded remained safe in his name only, thanks to prior legal maneuvering. Aurora nodded, voice barely above a whisper. I accept the 50-50 split for everything else. Rowan's throat felt tight. He remembered how they once planned to share everything, building a future side by side. Now they were dividing it all like a jigsaw puzzle. He forced composure. That's correct, he said, scanning the paperwork. A moment of silence followed. Aurora's eyes glimmered, but she kept her expression calm. If that's all, I just want to say I'm not going to contest anything, she murmured. I made my mistakes. An undercurrent of sadness swept the room, the only sound being the rustle of documents as Miss Jacobs pushed them forward. Rowan took up a pen. For a split second, the reality of signing the final dissolution of their decade-long marriage weighed on him. Mr. Blackwood, Miss Blackwood, Miss Jacobs said softly, sign where indicated. Once these are filed, the divorce should be effective within days. Rowan pressed the pen to the paper, heart pounding in his ears. He flicked a glance at Aurora, who was already signing. Her hand trembled. They exchanged no more words as they handed the forms back. Miss Jacobs offered a tight nod, shuffling the papers into neat order. That concludes our meeting, she said. Aurora left first, slipping from the room in silence. Rowan lingered, staring at the empty chair where she had been. His lawyer touched his shoulder gently, then stepped away to handle logistical matters. Finally, Rowan walked out to the parking lot. The late afternoon light cast long shadows, mirroring the hollowness he felt. He sank into the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel until his knuckles whitened. The finality of it all coursed through him, a marriage that began with such promise, now reduced to signed documents in a dull office. In the corner of his mind, he wondered how Aurora was coping. Yet even that sympathy couldn't erase the lingering sting of betrayal. With a weary exhale, he started the engine and drove off, unsure whether he felt relieved or crushed. A week after the court papers were officially filed, Aurora texted Rowan, requesting a final talk. They agreed to meet at a small cafe downtown, one that once hosted their early dates. Rows of potted plants decorated the windows, and faint jazz music wafted from within. When Rowan arrived, he found Aurora seated at a corner table, stirring a lukewarm latte. She looked up, eyes clouded with nerves. The memory of them laughing in these very seats stabbed him with nostalgia. He cleared his throat. "Got your message," he said, slipping into the chair across from her. "What's on your mind?" Aurora laced her fingers together. "Thank you for coming." She hesitated, scanning his face as if searching for traces of the Rowan she once knew. "I know we signed everything. It's over. But I need to apologize, properly." He stiffened slightly. "You already did. Many times." She inhaled, nodding. "I realize that. But I've had sessions with a real therapist, someone my mom recommended, and I see now how I let Celeste manipulate my insecurities, how I fell for Carter's surface charm. I hurt you in ways I never imagined. It's haunted me every day." Rowan shifted, a swirl of conflicting emotions churning beneath his composure. "And you think this talk will fix that?" Aurora's expression tightened, tears threatening. "I'm not naive enough to think we can go back. I just want you to know I regret everything. I regret betraying you, forcing your hand, humiliating you. I can't change the past. But if there's any way you can forgive—" He raised a hand, eyes flicking away. "Forgive, maybe. Forget, never. You tore me apart, Aurora." A hush blanketed the table, punctuated only by the subdued jazz tune overhead. Aurora closed her eyes momentarily, letting a tear escape. "I know," she whispered. Rowan rubbed his palm against the smooth wood of the table. "So what's your plan now? Still living with your mom?" She nodded. "Yes, Carter's out of the picture. Celeste, too. I'm trying to pick up the pieces of my life, looking for a full-time job, seeing a therapist. It's humbling, but it's the only way forward." He studied her face, noticing the faint shadows under her eyes, the raw sincerity in her tone. It felt almost like meeting a version of Aurora he once knew, but with deep cracks in her foundation. "I wish you better days," he finally said, voice softening slightly. Aurora blinked, relief mingling with sadness. "You deserve better, Rowan. If you're happy with April, I won't interfere." He took a slow sip of coffee, recalling April's presence in his home, the comfort she offered, albeit with complications of its own. "We'll see," he replied, unwilling to share details. "Still figuring things out." She nodded, seeming to accept that. "I just wanted to say sorry face to face. For everything." For a brief moment, they locked eyes. Flashes of old memories, wedding vows, weekend getaways, shared laughter danced between them. The ache of loss swelled. Rowan coughed, shifting in his seat. "Thank you for that, Aurora, and I'm sorry for my part in our downfall, too. Maybe I should have tried harder to understand you." She started to say something, but tears choked her. Instead, she reached out, gently brushing her fingers across his hand in a fleeting gesture of farewell. Then she stood, grabbed her purse, and walked away. Rowan remained seated, watching her reflection disappear in the window's glass. Outside, a gentle rain began to fall, a faint drizzle that tapped against the cafe's awning. In the hush of that old table, Rowan felt a profound sense of finality. The divorce papers might have sealed their fate, but this brief encounter sealed it in his heart. There was no turning back. A month later, Rowan stared at the last of his cardboard boxes in the entryway of his new apartment building. He'd quietly decided to move, leaving behind the house that held too many memories. The modest high-rise offered a fresh start, with neutral walls and a small balcony overlooking a busy street. He hauled the box inside, setting it next to a hand-me-down couch. A soft beep from his phone alerted him to a text from April. I'm around if you need help unpacking, but I understand if you prefer time alone. MK. Rowan exhaled. Since the divorce, his relationship with April had felt tenuous. She tried to be supportive, but he sensed tension. Perhaps his unresolved feelings for Aurora weighed them both down. For now, they remained in an undefined state. He typed back a quick thanks, promising to call when he'd settled. He glanced around the bare apartment. The only decorations were a few snapshots tacked to the fridge pictures from a fishing trip with Dewey and some old family photos he couldn't bear to discard. The emptiness suited his mood, a symbol of how he needed to rebuild life from scratch. Meanwhile, across town, Aurora woke in her childhood bedroom at Mildred's home. She noticed a framed photo on her nightstand. Her mother must have placed it there. It showed Aurora and Rowan on their wedding day, beaming at the camera. The image once radiated hope. Now it felt like a bittersweet ghost. She let out a shaky breath, remembering her therapist's advice. Acknowledge the past, but don't live in it. Setting the photo face down, Aurora dressed for another job interview. She planned to apply for a receptionist role at a local medical office. Her prior experience in customer service might help. As she passed the living room, her mother smiled gently. "Morning, dear. Good luck today." "Thanks, Mom," Aurora murmured, voice tentative. "I really appreciate you letting me stay here." Mildred gave her a tight squeeze on the arm. "You're my daughter. I'll always be here." Stepping outside, Aurora inhaled the crisp morning air. For the first time in a while, she felt a small surge of optimism. Her therapy sessions had begun to chip away at her guilt, helping her accept that the best she could do now was keep moving forward. No more illusions, no more chasing fantasies of Carter or fixating on Rowan's life. As she waited at the bus stop, a thought flitted through her mind. How was Rowan doing? She quelled the urge to message him again, knowing they both needed space. The bus arrived and she climbed aboard, clutching her resume with trembling hands. One step at a time, she reminded herself. A few weeks slipped by. Late one afternoon, Rowan stepped out onto his small apartment balcony. The city sprawled below, cars humming and honking. Holding his phone, he checked notifications, only to find a text from an unknown number. He opened it cautiously. "Rowan? It's Aurora. Just wanted to say I'm starting a new job Monday. Thanks for everything, take care." He stared at the message for a long moment. No hidden pleas, no manipulative undertones, simply an update, perhaps a quiet farewell. A swirl of mixed feelings cascaded through him. Relief that she was finding her footing, regret at the finality, and a subtle hint of pride that she was moving on. He typed a short reply. "Congrats. I'm glad you're doing better. Same to you, take care." After hitting send, he leaned on the railing. The sky was tinted with the fiery glow of a setting sun. Strangely, it reminded him of the last real conversation he and Aurora shared without anger maybe years ago, sitting on their porch watching a sunset. Life had changed so drastically since then. He felt a gentle breeze carrying the promise of a cooler evening. Maybe we both learned something, he mused. His revenge against Carter and Celeste had left him hollow. The divorce, though painful, freed him from a toxic cycle. Aurora, in her own way, was rebuilding too, free from Celeste's manipulations and Carter's empty promises. Behind him, a knock sounded at the front door, likely April, or maybe Dewey dropping by with a housewarming gift. Rowan allowed himself a small smile, a subtle surge of hope. He took one last look at the sunset, exhaled slowly, then stepped back inside. The door swung open and voices greeted him, reminding him that even after devastation, life carries on. While the scars remained, he was determined to move forward more cautious, but also more self-aware. In another part of town, Aurora left her shift at the medical office, shoulders aching from a long day. Yet there was a faint smile on her lips as she texted her therapist about another successful milestone. She would never forget the lessons from her failed marriage, but she vowed not to be defined by them. That night, Aurora reread Rowan's short, congratulatory message and felt a strange warmth in her chest, relief that despite everything, maybe forgiveness could exist in small ways. She whispered a silent apology to her past self, then closed her phone with a final, calm acceptance. Epilogue. And so, on different paths, Rowan and Aurora navigated the aftermath of betrayal, anger, and regret. Neither emerged unscathed, yet both carried forward scraps of hope. Life moved on. The city lights sparkled against the dusk, as each found a cautious peace in starting anew apart, but no longer trapped in the torment of unresolved pain.